Hey, Bev, how are you?
I'm tired. How are you?
I'm tired as well. So, I was this weekend, which before we get started on our normal talk, this is leading into the question I have for you. But yeah, this week I had an impromptu trip to Knoxville to help Caleb and his in laws, Aaron and Sherry, do some stuff. So, it was a fun trip, but I'm pretty tired, pretty exhausted. Um, but before we get started on our main conversation today, I was going to go over our next few weekends and let people see kind of what we have going on.
We're busy. From now till the end of the year, I feel like it's going to be busy, busy.
Yeah, so my I have a question at the end of this, but basically and by the way, you're going to hear this beeping sound. We're in our extended garage and something's beeping out here and I don't know what it is. But anyway, so I was in Knoxville this weekend and that's about a 3.5 hour drive from here. And so next weekend, we are going to be back in Knoxville to help our daughter move into her and her husband's
Very
house.
first house.
Very first house.
So excited. It's such a cute little house.
Yeah. And then the week after that, you and I are going on a weekend vacation to where?
It's called I think it's the Hidden Cave in Kentucky, but it's supposed to be like this bed and breakfast type place where you just kind of unplug and there are going to be cows and horses and all kinds of farm animals out and about. You just kind of get out and hike and enjoy the peacefulness of the area.
And the place we're staying, they have a bourbon bar, so I'm excited about that.
I'll be petting cows. He'll be getting drunk. It'll be fun for the whole family.
Fun for the whole family. Then possibly the weekend after that, we're going back to Knoxville to maybe help Bethany and Eric settle in a little bit.
But if you know my daughter, she will be well done packed by then. Like she'll be unpacked in the first 2 days.
Yeah, hopefully. So then we get a weekend off, and then the next weekend is Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into the holiday season and all that kind of stuff, which that led me to think over the past couple of days. We live in Kentucky, northern Kentucky, so we're close to Cincinnati. Our kids are in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And Crossville.
And Crossville. Well, I mean, that Knoxville area. And so it got me thinking, like, I have to go back to Knoxville once a month for work anyway, so it's not a big deal for me. But, like, I was thinking this weekend as I was helping Caleb and all this kind of stuff, and what's going to happen when they start having kids and we start having grandkids? Or is this what our weekends are going to look like every weekend or every other weekend? Are we going to be Knoxville bound?
I don't know. I'm hoping to either by then have enough PTO at my job to be able to take weeks and stuff off at a time, or either be able to work from home more and just go there and do some of my work. But however it works out, I will be hanging out with my grandkids as much as possible.
Yeah.
And during the summer, when they get older, they're going to come hang out with me during the summer like we used to do. When our kids were little, we used to ship them off to Mississippi for the summer to hang out with your parents. And so I'm going to expect my children to let their children come hang out with us during the summers when they are old enough.
Yeah. And I'm going to spoil them and sugar them up and
no, we're not.
Send them back to their parents.
You're not sugaring them up. That's not good for the kiddo.
Yeah, it is.
No.
It's good for our relationship with the kiddo.
No.
We'll stay tuned. We'll stay tuned and see how that one plays out. All right, but for now, this week we are talking about we're skipping ahead a little bit. I mean, there's not a whole lot that went on in between our Colorado trip. We started dating, but then, I mean, was it a year later that I proposed to you? A year and a half later, something like that?
Yeah, about a year and a half, because that was January 96 is when we started dating, and I think
we were married in 98, so...
Yeah, it was summer of 97 when I went to do summer missions.
So today we're going to be talking about the trip where I proposed to Heather.
Welcome to Loving Our 25 to Life. I'm Heather.
And I'm Bo. Together we've been married over 25 years.
Yeah, baby!
And this is where we talk about life, love, and all the adventures we have had along the way.
Oh, wow.
Whether we're sharing stories from our marriage or taking you along one of our trips, we're here to reflect on how we've made it this far and where we are headed next.
So grab a seat, settle in, and let's dive into another episode of Loving Our 25 to Life.
When I was in between I think it was my junior and senior year of college, I had signed up to do summer missions, I forget what it's called, missionary journey or whatever, where you, through the Southern Baptist Convention, you would go to a place. You could do international or national. And I chose my top three. I don't remember all of them, but one of my top three was Fort Myers Beach, Florida, which I'd never been there, but I knew I liked the beach. I knew I liked the sun. And I got that assignment. And so it was a 10-week time period that I would be gone away from my family. And at the time, Bo and I were pretty, we'd been dating for over a year, so we were pretty serious. And sorry, guys, I told you I was tired. I'm just very relaxed. Like, it's Sunday. I'm in my sweats and just kind of no makeup, no hair. I'm just kind of being lazy. But anyway, so I went, and it was a very cool experience. Like, there's still people I met that I remember. And it was just really looking back on it now as an older adult, it's cool to see the way God worked and things that I learned about him, because just his timing in some things and then not in others. And so I don't know how much in depth you want me to go with that. Like,
keep going.
Like, for example, one of our things we had to do was called vendor visits. And so we would go down the beach with cookies and boxed apple juices, and to all the jet ski vendors and the parasailing vendors and all the things on a specific stretch of beach. And so we would walk up to them, and, our first meeting was, "Hi, my name's Heather." And my buddy at the time, he was my partner. His name was Ian, I-O-N, literally. It wasn't Ian, it was Ian. Took me forever to get that. We would go down the beach and, give this stuff out and say, "Hey, I'm Heather. This is Ian. We're with, I forget, I think we said Southern Mission Board or something like that. And we're here to help support you. And if you have any questions, we'd like to share the gospel with you, blah, blah, blah." And so two vendors I remember the most. One of them was a little short guy, and the whole summer, we saw him twice a week for the whole summer, and he was very nice, and we were very, we talked a lot, we got to know each other, but at the end of the 10 weeks, like, he still was like, "Yeah, well, the Bible's just a good history book, and I don't really believe in all that stuff." But we had some good talks and things like that. But the very first time I met a guy, his name was Dean. Ian and I walked up to him. We're like, "Hey, I'm Heather. This is Ian, and we're here with the Mississippi Baptist Convention Board, and we want to present this to you and see if you have any questions." And before we could get another word out, I guess Dean had seen the tract or whatever in my hand. And he said, "Oh my gosh, God literally sent you here today for us." And of course, Ian and I are looking at each other like, is this guy joking? Because we had just dealt with the guy down the way that, like, he didn't make fun of us or anything, but he basically said that what we believed was not accurate. But as we got to know Dean throughout the summer, it was really kind of cool that he had an experience like a week or two before we got there where he had overdosed on drugs. And he said, "I just remember in the midst of it all, I woke up and I looked over and there was a tract laying by me, and it was John 3:16. And he said, at the time, I didn't know what it was, but I knew it had something to do with God. And I just remember saying to myself, God, if you'll get me through this, I will straighten up." And I guess that was about a week before we got there. And he said later, after I sobered up, I looked it up and I read John 3:16. And he said, "And now here you are." And so for the whole summer, like, every time we would meet with Dean, we would just talk for as long as we had about God and the Bible and answer his questions. And he even found a church there that he wanted us to go with him. Of course, we had to get permission from our leader, but the leader was like, "Yeah, it's fine if the two of y'all go together with him." So Dean was an older single guy. So he found a church there that had a really good singles group. And so a couple of times during the summer, Ian and I went with him just so he wouldn't feel so alone. And he got involved in that group. And I kept up with him for probably 5 or 10 years after that. And he was still full force. Like he had become a Christian, gotten baptized, was really involved in the church, had met a Christian girl that he married. And so I just thought that was kind of cool, just seeing God's timing with, for the first guy, he wasn't there yet, but maybe we planted a seed. But then for Dean, somebody before us had planted a seed, and we were actually able there to watch it grow and watch God do his thing in his life. So that sums up my summer missions trip. But during that 10-week period, you came to visit me twice.
Twice.
And the first time, right, was with your family.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So it was a 10-week thing, and we had really just started getting serious. And so I hated the fact that you were going to be gone 10 weeks, and we'd only been dating roughly a year or so. I had gotten together with your roommate at the time, who at the time you guys were friends. I don't think there became a time where y'all weren't so much friends, but...
You want to talk about why that was?
No. But y'all were friends, so I got with her.
She was trying to take my man.
I got with her, and she was trying to take your man's brother.
No, she took my man's brother because she couldn't have my man.
All right. So anyway...
You started it.
I got with her, and we got to talking about, I think she may have been the one to reach out to you to find out if I could come. And so anyway, it ended up being my mom, Jennifer, me,
Ron,
my friend Ron, and my brother Daniel. All of us hopped in the car, and we drove down to Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And I think in another podcast, I talked about how my sickness, like I get all this stuff now, this bronchitis and stuff. And I got super sick in Colorado, but I think it was the worst it was ever on this trip. So halfway down to Florida, right about the time you get off the Panhandle and you start heading down, I got super sick. I was literally coughing up blood and I couldn't breathe. So our trip was postponed a little bit. We had to stop by this local hospital, and they pretty much told me like I had a cold, get over it, gave me some little over-the-counter medicine or whatever and sent me on my way. Well, it ended up, did I go back to the hospital when I was in Fort Myers? Or
no, but you were sick.
I was super sick, but when I came home, I guess it was I came home, I went back to the hospital, and it ended up being like bacterial pneumonia, which ate the lining of my lungs. And so that's what started me down this path of like this terrible lung stuff that I get every year. But anyway, it started on this wonderful trip. So we get down there. It's like I said, it's all of us. And the purpose of me and my family and my best friend in the world and all of us going was I was going to propose to you. And so before we get to that story, one of the coolest, funniest, Heather and I were reminiscing about this the other day and talking about things that we remember from this trip. And what I think is one of the funniest parts of this story, one of the things that Heather had to do on a daily was do what they called beach ministry, where they go out and, if there's a group of people playing volleyball or whatever, they, go up and kind of talk to them and play some volleyball with them or play, whatever. Am I right? Am I on the right track? Yeah. So here we are with this group of people, and Heather and I was probably with Heather, and we were playing volleyball with this group of people. And I look back over few feet away from us is another group of guys, and they're all sitting around drinking beer, and my buddy Ron is over there drinking beer with them. And so, technically we were all kind of there to support Heather and what she was doing, and my buddy was drinking beer with these guys behind us. And I think Heather was so mad, but it was kind of funny. Like looking back on it, it was such a funny story. But it was a cool trip. I think we were there a week, and I ended up proposing to you. We went out to this nice, super fancy restaurant. All of us, all the people that I brought, Heather's roommate and close friend at the time, my best friend, my brother, my mom, all of us were there. And so I think if I remember correctly, I got the attention of everybody in the restaurant and said my spiel. We got engaged, and it was an awesome time. And then we left, and then a week later, your mom and dad were going to come to visit you. And which another kind of part of this story is the guy that was, I guess, your boss for the summer was a little perturbed because you weren't supposed to have visitors in the first place. But I mean, you can't stop us from coming. I mean, we didn't stay with y'all or anything. So
yeah, I mean, it didn't affect. We had off days, and so you would work your time there around the off days. So it wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't like skipping out on any of the things, my responsibilities that I was supposed to have.
But I think he was a little perturbed that, like, I brought my family down one week, and then the very next week, your family was there. But at the time, I worked at the airport, and so I could get free tickets. So I flew down to visit you again when your mom and dad were there. And that was a trip in itself, because that's when I learned your mom and dad both snored like freight trains, but their timing wasn't together. So instead of one collective snore, they snored in between each other's snores. So it was like one long snore the whole night. And so I stayed in their hotel room with them, and I vowed never to do that again.
Meanwhile, I'm over at the Mission, sleeping on a very comfy bunk bed in complete silence, and Bo apparently is sleeping in between my parents and listening to the chainsaws.
Yeah, but it was a super fun time, and I look back on that trip and those times, and I mean, Heather and I were talking about this the other day, that we were young, we were in college, and we were at that age where, you know, you kind of think you know everything, and we were certainly starting our journeys, not just with each other, but, you know, shortly after that is when I started going to school at William Carey, right?
You know, I was just thinking, I think that was the summer of 96, because we were engaged for a while, and then you came in the winter, I think, because if it was the summer of 97, then my dad would have been diagnosed in February of 98. I think it was longer than that. Like, we had been together. Yeah. We'd been engaged for a while before my dad got his diagnosis. So I think it was the summer of 96. We did summer missions, and then
it was the summer of 96 because
the Olympics.
When I flew back to Florida for the second week, the first week with my family, we drove. The second week I flew because I could fly for free, and I had to go through Atlanta to get there, and then, which was fine. Going through Atlanta was fine, but when I flew back through Atlanta, that's when I got stuck, and my flight out of Fort Myers was like 8 o'clock that morning. I got in Atlanta at like, 10 o'clock that morning, and I missed every single flight that day going out of Atlanta because of the Olympics, and so many people were traveling. And back then, it's still this way, I guess, but back then the rule was if you worked at an airline, you could get free tickets, like free standby tickets to fly wherever you wanted to. But the rule was if you missed your shift, you would get written up, because even though you can travel anywhere you want for free, you still can't miss work to do it. And so I had to be at work at 5:30 the next morning. And that day I got stuck in Atlanta, and I missed every single flight. The last flight that went to Jackson, Mississippi from Atlanta was at 11:30 p.m. And there was travel going on. I think there might have been a storm or something. But anyway, all the flights were full or overbooked. This last flight, I mean, there were 300 people at the gate, and I thought, I'm never going to get on here. And I went and talked to the lady at the front, and I told her my predicament. She gave me a ticket, a confirmed seat, but still, that doesn't mean anything. I was on flights before where I would be sitting down, and then they would come and say, oh, sorry, somebody came to the gate, a paying customer, and they would take you off the seat. So I remember I was sitting on the plane, a completely packed plane, and I was in the middle seat, and I saw the ticket agent come on the plane, and she started walking aisle by aisle looking for somebody, and I was praying, please don't let it be me. And so she walked right past me, turned around, walked right past me, got off the plane, the door shut, and then I was home free. But I was so worried that, because if I would miss that plane, I would have missed my shift and gotten in trouble. But so I got it home at, I think we talked about a couple episodes ago that I used to drive to Hattiesburg and drive home at like 2:00 in the morning, but I got home at like 2:00 that morning and had to be at work at 5:30. So that was par for the course. But yeah, so, I mean, I look back on those times, and it's like, not only were we growing and starting our life together, but we were really learning like what kind of adults we were going to be, because we were 21 years old. I mean, we were our kids' age, that they
younger
are
than
our kids are now. But I just remember,
Do we have time to tell the Frito-Lay story?
Yeah, we can. So I mentioned that I shortly after that started going to William Carey, and it's because once I was engaged, my parents were kind of on the train of like, you can't work at the airport, because I was making like minimum wage at the airport. So they were like, you got to figure out what you want to do. And if you know me, I was a really super good student in school. Just kidding. I was a terrible student, and I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to, I hated school. So my dad was a truck driver, like an 18-wheeler truck driver, over-the-road truck driver for Frito-Lay. And he said, I can get you a job with Frito-Lay as a box truck driver, like a route salesman. So it's the guy that takes the chips and stuff to the local convenience stores. And you can do that. And the only thing is, it won't be in Jackson, Mississippi, where we lived. It would be in Meridian, Mississippi, which is about an hour and a half away. So my dad helped me get this job. The problem was, it was not in Jackson, Mississippi, where I lived, but it was in Meridian, Mississippi, which is like an hour and a half away. And so he got me the job. He helped me find an apartment. He actually even paid my first and last month's rent at the apartment, because I hadn't even started my job yet. He actually bought a week or 2 weeks worth of food and stacked my refrigerator. So I was just really kind of set and ready to go. And as fate would have it, I got stuck with this guy who pretty much changed the course of my life. So my first day of work, we get started at 3:30 in the morning. The whole day, this guy was kind of grooming me to be, a Frito-Lay route salesman. He was telling me, to be successful in this thing, you have to just work and work and work. And he said he works 7 days a week. He gets up at 3:30 in the morning, and he doesn't get done till 6 or 7 at night. And he loves his job, and he does it every day. And even he works holidays, and nothing. If you're going to be really successful at this job, you need to put your job first and all this stuff. And I remember the whole day I had the struggle of like, what am I going to do? And so after that day was over, I went to my apartment. I'm pretty sure I called you. Did I call you?
Mm-hmm.
I called Heather, and I said, I'm going to quit this job. And of course, being newly engaged to somebody who has a job lined up and an apartment and all this stuff, that didn't go over as well as I thought it would have gone over. She was mad at me. I called the guy, my boss, and I told him I quit, and I told him why, and he was actually fairly understanding. I called my dad, and I think if my dad could have reached my throat, I would be a dead man right now, because he was livid. And so at the time, still kind of it's this way, but at the time, me and my grandfather were super close. So I called my grandfather, and I said, I think my dad's going to kill me. This is why. So my grandfather was my hype man. So he took care of my dad for me, got my dad off my back. He came to Meridian and helped me load all my stuff up. And I think I went and stayed with him a few days so my dad could cool off. And And then came the time where I had to talk with your dad, and your dad was just as mad that, the guy that's going to marry his daughter quit his job. So, as a dad now, I could look back and, if the guy that's going to marry my daughter quit his job and all that stuff, I would be upset too. But
I think my dad's thing was he just wanted you to have a not a purpose, but like a plan, like you said, if Eric had come to us and wanted to marry Bethany and he was going to work at the Walmart for the rest of his life, we'd be like, I mean, you can, but I think my dad would just wanted to know that I was going to be taken care of and that it wasn't going to be a different job every week.
I will say this. Your dad knew about me that I was a confused young man who didn't want to go to school because I wasn't good at school. But I don't have the body for manual labor, so I wasn't cut out for that the rest of my life. Which it wasn't manual labor that scared me. It was just the fact that I was not willing to work 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and work. It never has been or never will be the sole purpose of my existence.
Well, and that's a big thing too for both of us now, especially. I think that we both know that you have to work to make money, but we've never made our jobs. If we didn't like what we were doing, we changed it. Which you've been where you are for 18 years because you like your job, you like what you're doing, you like the people you work with. I, on the other hand, being in the medical field, I changed jobs. Up until recently, I changed jobs. I'm hoping the job I have now will be the job I retire with, but who knows? But I would change jobs every 2 to 5 years or so because I would either get frustrated or decide that's not what I wanted to do. Or honestly, there's only so many years at one time you can take of being in the ER, and I would change. But I just feel I hope that we've instilled in our kids that yes, work is important and making a living is important, but it should never be your life. You shouldn't make work your life. That you have to think about, your family and all the things. But when I was a 20-something-year-old, I didn't think that way. And so after you gave me your news, I gave you your ring back. Remember?
Mm-hmm. It wasn't just that, though. It was, you gave me my ring back, but it was because you didn't like the music I was listening to. You didn't like the attitude that I had, which, I was a 21-year-old. And so I took things a little too seriously, and I yelled a little too much and listened to aggressive music and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to point out that your dad is single-handedly the reason that I'm where I am today, because he wasn't an artist, but he was a fan of art and an appreciator of art. And so he and I would talk about it all the time. And he's the one person in my life that would tell me, you're good at art, you're a creative person, you need to do it for a living. And I had other people in my life that would tell me, you can't do anything with art, you'll
never make money.
You'll never make money at it, you can't do anything with it. He was the only person in my life that said, you need to find what you love to do and figure out a way to do it. And my rebuttal to him was, I'm not fit for school, I'm not whatever. And he would always say, school is 4 years. It's buckle down. You can do anything for 4 years, get it out of the way, and then the rest of your life, you get to do whatever you want. And I mean, at the time, I never saw myself doing video work. I never saw myself doing what I do today, but it was through him that I realized, when you watch TV, the commercials, somebody has to put those together. When you drive down the road, there's billboards everywhere. That's art. Somebody has to do that. I didn't even know I didn't know what graphic design meant. I didn't know what any of that was. And so, I finally decided it was either do a manual labor job that I wasn't cut out to do the rest of my life, or do something like this. So he's the one that pushed me to go to school and become what I am today. And so, even here we are 96 was when I started school. So almost 30 years later, that's 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
30 years later, I still give him the credit for where I am today. So even though you didn't believe in me, nobody else believed in me. Your dad believed in me. So, that's where that kind of landed. And
Let's close with our Olive Garden story.
Yeah, okay, so
I'm telling it.
go ahead.
So,
And first off, we apologize that this is so long. This episode is so long.
you'll cut some of it out.
I know, but there's just so much good stuff to talk about.
So when Bo decided what he was going to do and he started going to William Carey with me, we were so Hattiesburg is in South Mississippi. So we were only about maybe less than an hour from the coast. Well, Hattiesburg, when we wanted to have a decent date night, we didn't want to stay in Hattiesburg. So we'd go to the coast, and there were a lot of restaurants and stuff down there. And he would be like, hey, where do you want to go eat? And I was like, it doesn't matter. How about you? And so he would say Olive Garden. And I was like, okay. So for about 6 to 8 months, every time we would do this, we would go to Olive Garden. And so one night we were heading down there, and he was like, hey, you want to go down to the coast and eat at Olive Garden? And I don't know if I was just comfortable enough in the relationship to tell you this or what, but I'm like, I really don't like Olive Garden that well. And he was like, I don't like it at all. And I said, then why are we going? He said, I was going because I thought you wanted to go. And I was like, I was going because I thought you wanted to go. And so I don't know. We maybe have been to Olive Garden once since then. And it's
right.
But every time we pass an Olive Garden, it's like, hey, baby, you want to go to Olive Garden? But I just think it was neat because I see these TikToks all the time now where it's like the beginning of the relationship. There's one I saw the other day where this guy's in the kitchen and he's in the way of the cabinet the girl wants to open, and it says the beginning of the relationship. The lady's like, honey, move your head. I'm about to open this cabinet. And it says toward after you've been together for a while, she just comes in and opens the cabinet, knocks him in the head. But I just think that was funny that when we first started out on our journey, we were like, oh, whatever you want to do, babe. But then I think we got to the point, and even now, I mean, we're to the point where like unless it is something I really am adamant about, I don't really care either way. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're just still really good at compromise, but also being honest.
It was two things. Back then, we were at the point in life where we, didn't have money of our own except for the little odd jobs we could work. And so back then, Olive Garden was a like
treat.
5-star restaurant that we, but I always, if you know anything about me, until the past, say, 15 years of my life, I would never eat anything. I wouldn't eat salad dressing. I don't eat anything creamy. I wouldn't eat anything other than, kids today, they eat chicken nuggets and pizza. That's pretty much how I ate back then. So, going to Olive Garden, even though for me it was supposed to be a fancy restaurant that, I hated everything about Olive Garden. And so, but I was always willing to go there for Heather, and I would eat salads with nothing on it and get all I wouldn't even eat like fettuccine or whatever because I thought it had mayonnaise or sour cream in it or whatever. So.
Which is funny because right across from the Olive Garden was a Red Lobster, which I loved, but I never would say that because I thought you wanted to go to the Olive Garden. So all the Red Lobster trips I missed because I thought you wanted. So anyway, the takeaway from today, kids, is communicate with your spouse. If you don't like going to the Olive Garden, tell them. They may not like it either.
Yeah. So next week, we will talk a little bit about how we both ended up in the ministry, even though a year before that, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. And you wanted to plug something before we left. Well,
on that track, we'll talk about how I was the first female Southern Baptist youth minister in the Lauderdale County Association and how that went. But if you guys, so I asked Bo the other day if he could tell if anybody was listening or interacting or whatever. And he said that a few of you are downloading it. But if you are listening, if you'll go to our Facebook page or our Instagram page, Loving Our 25 to Life, and just kind of do a comment or a thumbs up or whatever, any kind of input or questions you guys might have. We would love to hear from you and address any kind of information that we can give you about anything we've talked about. Not that we're, geniusly insightful on anything, but I would just like the interaction to see what you guys think.
I am pretty geniusly.
All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good week.
Bye. That's it for today's episode of Loving Our 25 to Life. Aww. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found something to take with you on your own journey.
Remember, love is an adventure. Sometimes it's wild, sometimes it's calm, but it's always worth it.
Yes!
If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who might need a little inspiration.
And don't forget to follow along for more episodes and vlogs documenting our travels, life lessons, and hopefully plenty of laughs.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep loving life because it is the greatest adventure of all. Bye for now.